Hi everyone, welcome to this special video, which is about intermittent fasting. So this time around, I'm actually going to pull up a little PowerPoint because then I can show you in a graph the different types of fasting and also how a fasting day might look for you. So I'm going to share my screen, bear with me. Here we go. So I'll probably end up having to move me a few times. So what is fasting? Let's start off by explaining that. So fasting, first of all, it's been around for millennia. Our ancestors regularly fasted. Usually that was a forced form of fasting. Down here. We didn't have the luxury of eating every couple of hours. And so our body has basically adapted to fast, and fasting is effectively a calorie restriction, which our bodies need. And the research shows that restricting calories, not all the time, you don't want to starve to death, but restricting calories actually, because it puts our body into a form of stress, can be beneficial for a lot of people, not everybody, in the long term. Now, people that are in the blue zones, and these are people that are areas of the world where they have the greatest population of centenarians, those over 100 years old who are thriving and doing really well, actively taking part in their communities. They all fast, but they fast in different ways. So some do one-day fast, some do water-only fast, some might do several weeks of fasting, some just do a limited energy intake. So they're all different. So they all have some form of calorie restriction, but how they do it is very different. And the research on fasting has largely been done on animals, not on people, although this is starting to change. So animal studies have shown that fasting helps to improve how the brain works, that it reduces inflammation and oxidative stress, this is like the internal rust, that it can treat and prevent diabetes, cardiovascular disease, some cancers and some neurological disorders. So the research is it's one of those areas of research that's really starting to boom at the moment. Most of the surge of interest in fasting in particular has been because of its effect on weight loss, and particular intermittent fasting. So intermittent fasting is basically, it's a cycle between fasting and eating. So usually there's about a 60% restriction of energy. Energy comes from our food, mainly protein, carbohydrates, fats, and alcohol. And it's either on alternate days, over 2 to 3 days, with 4 to 5 days of eating normally. Then you might have 2 days where you eat less food, less calories. But there are lots of variations. And that's the problem with the research, is that there are so many variations. It makes it really hard in research to know, well, what kind of fasting are they researching? And if you wanted to replicate that research, do you have enough information to know how they fasted in the study? So that's one of the problems with research, is there are so many variations. It makes it really hard to standardize it. So sometimes it isn't about calorie restriction, it's more about just resting the digestive system. So here are some examples of types of fasting. So there's one that's called the 16 to 8. You fast for 16 hours and you eat within an 8-hour window. Usually skip breakfast. So it's kind of like a part-day fasting. So you'd eat from, say, 1 p.m. to 9 p.m. as an example. There's also your fast feast fast, which is basically fasting once a week, maybe twice a week, but there's no calorie restrictions at all. So you basically eat as normal. I mean, you could eat McDonald's every single day, and then on Sunday you fast, you don't eat anything. So it's not necessarily about health. That's about the calorie restriction. Then you've got your 5 to 2. Again, you fast for 2 days, and that tends to be days where there's a really tight calorie restriction, where you eat around 600 calories. Sometimes it's anywhere between 500 and 800 calories. And then you can eat whatever you want on the other 5 days. You've got time-restricted eating. which is something I have a bit of a bias towards, which is it's a bit more flexible. You can eat within an 8 to an 11-hour window. So the time of fasting basically has to be longer than the time of eating, but you can be really flexible with what that looks like. And again, there's no calorie restriction. It's about eating as healthy as you can, but you just have a period of time where you fast for longer than you eat. And then obviously there's the skip a meal. So it might be that you eat, you skip breakfast on Monday, you skip lunch on Tuesday, you might skip breakfast and lunch here and there. You basically skip a meal now and again to reduce your calorie restriction within that day. So why does it work? Let's start off by just talking about how it works, and then we'll talk about why it's thought to be good for you. So first of all, what's important is to understand that we have an amount of energy that we need in order to survive. And this is basically the functions that go on in the background while we're resting. So we have something called the basal metabolic rate. And that is the amount of energy that we need in order to for the heart to pump oxygen around the body, for nutrients to be pumped to the cells, for us to be able to breathe, for our liver and kidneys to detoxify, our digestive system to digest, our cells to die and regenerate, and our immune system to function. So we need energy for all of that to happen in the background. And our energy comes from food. So we obviously hear about the term calories or even kilojoules. These are basically measurement units for the energy in food. And we need to eat a certain amount of energy in order to just survive. And then on top of that, we need energy to thrive, which is what we call our estimated energy requirement. Now, generally, women require between 1,600 and 2,000 calories a day. Men need about 2,000 to 3,000 calories a day. But this really does depend on your age, your size, your height, your lifestyle, how active you are, how healthy you are. And as we age, our metabolic rate does tend to decrease. So we need less food and less energy. So you might have seen your grandparents, actually, they're sleeping more, they're eating less, and that's just part of that process. So fasting basically reduces our energy. It puts stress on the body in order to encourage it to become stronger. And then we can adapt to stress, which helps the body resist disease. So with weight loss, basically our body gets most of its energy from glucose, carbohydrates and fat. So carbohydrates and protein can both be turned into glucose. Fat produces has a different type of energy. So when we eat, glucose is stored in the liver and our muscle, and any excess is then stored as fat in both our liver and our fat cells, and that's not so easily accessible. And then over time, insulin drops, the body starts to use stored glucose and then fat. Our blood vessels expand and try to get as much oxygen and nutrients to the heart, brain, and cells. And then after about 12 hours of fasting, our body then starts to use the stored fat. So that's one of the reasons why it's thought to be really good for health, for weight loss, is because it's a way of encouraging our body to use that stored energy that's in our fat cells rather than constantly going to the glucose cupboard. So it's considered to be good for us, one, because it's been shown to help with weight loss, particularly belly fat. But the reason why it's thought to be good is that when you lose weight, we lose our muscle mass as well as our fat mass. And fasting has been shown that it actually just reduces fat. It doesn't reduce muscle, which is really important for us. It's been shown to help with insulin resistance, to reduce inflammation. It may help reduce the risk factors of heart disease, particularly in regards to blood, fats, insulin, and glucose, may prevent cancer, may protect from dementia and Alzheimer's disease, may improve longevity, increases our energy and productivity, and time-restricted eating is thought to be the most flexible. So out of all of those health benefit examples, basically, as I said, with weight loss, we know that it teaches people it's okay to be hungry, because one of the things that we know is that in the West in particular, we don't like being hungry. We're just not used to it. So the one thing about fasting is it teaches us that it's okay to be hungry. We don't have to eat. We're gonna survive if we don't have snacks. There is actually increasing evidence that it can help prevent diabetes, because it helps to reduce blood glucose and also insulin. It's been shown to be really good for gut health, because bacteria like short periods of fasting. This is based on animal studies, unfortunately. And time-restricted eating in particular was shown that it helps to re-establish circadian rhythms in our gut. And this kind of, we have the kind of a rhythm, a routine, a pattern, and it helps to re-establish that so our gut functions properly. Fasting has been shown in some research to shock the brain to create new nerve cells, neurons, which are resistant to the plaques that are known to be a part of Alzheimer's and dementia. Fasting might improve memory and learning. There's some studies done on depression, but they're mainly good in the short term, not so good in the long term. And it's also been shown to help reduce blood pressure as well as blood fats, which have been linked obviously to cardiovascular disease. So lots and lots and lots of research has been done on animals. They're only just starting to see human studies. The last 15 years, the research has really grown to include human studies, particularly in weight loss, gut health, brain health, diabetes, and heart disease. Some of the studies done on animals showed that in regards to the longevity part is that the rats in particular are living anywhere up to 83% longer when they were given a diet where there was a bit of fasting. So that's where they believe that this idea that fasting can help with longevity. Plus also, as I said, you've got these blue zones communities of people who are over 100 and really healthy, and they all fast. So that's kind of where that's come from. So is fasting safe? Is intermittent fasting safe? So we're not talking about fasting for a long period of time. We're talking for this cyclic eating, fasting. So is it safe? Yes, but I want to talk about the but because it's really important. So it's really important that you should not fast if you are pregnant or breastfeeding, because your body needs all these extra calories because it's producing another human being. Don't fast if you're trying to conceive. If you suffer from symptoms of amenorrhea, that's when you don't have a period. That can be because of stress already in the body. You don't want to add to stress. If you're underweight, if you have a history or you're currently experiencing an eating disorder, you really don't want to be doing intermittent fasting. If you are currently going through extreme stress, or you are in burnout, or you have any kind of adrenal fatigue or Addison's disease or anything like that, you do not want to be doing intermittent fasting. Certainly not unless you're getting expert help. Young children shouldn't be doing intermittent fasting. Athletes, we have to be really careful. So athletes have high energy needs. So it's really important that you get some kind of expert health. It's actually contraindicated. It means that you shouldn't do it if you're competing in an event. There aren't many studies, and most of the studies contradict themselves, again, because there's so many different forms of fasting. And lots of the studies on athletes have actually been done on Muslims because they fast during Ramadan. So they were looking at the effects of fasting during Ramadan on athletic performance. And it was suggested that professional athletes who train more than twice a day, that basically they shouldn't fast for more than 16 hours. It actually was detrimental to them. Those that were doing some kind of high intensity type sport, that it could impair speed, it can impair power. But then after a month, athletes then adapted. Didn't make any difference to endurance, and if people skipped breakfast, it didn't actually make any difference, although testosterone dropped, and testosterone is really important for power and strength and muscle mass. Most of the studies were short-term. They had varied results, and they were looking at different types of fasting too. So it's something that needs more research on. What I would say that's really important is, one, obviously, testosterone seems to be reduced, and that can affect your muscles, performance, strength, vitality. The other thing is that there is a hormone called hepcidin, and that regulates iron absorption. So when hepcidin is high, iron absorption is reduced. And those people, particularly women who do intensive training, they tend to have high amounts of hepcidin, which may increase anemia in female athletes because it's basically going to stop you from absorbing iron. Our peak iron absorption is in the morning. So particularly if you're an athlete, if you skip breakfast, you are much more at risk of anemia as well, iron deficiency anemia. So just bear that in mind too. You also, as an athlete, need to make sure that you're getting enough nutrients as well as calories, your energy. So you have to eat within 1 to 2 hours of competition or training to ensure that you restore the glycogen and restore your muscles. So that's something also to be careful with. Also, women need to be really careful because sometimes calorie restriction can cause more problems than it solves. So if you start to do any form of fasting and then your period stops, please don't fast. As I said, if you don't have a period, don't fast. It can actually make it worse. It might be that you have something like time restricted eating is actually less detrimental. You want shorter fasting periods, fewer fasting just now and again, and that might be more beneficial, but you do have to be really careful. I'll just move me to over here. So there's some research, not a huge amount, that intermittent fasting actually worsened blood sugar control in women than in men. In animal rat studies, female rats became more masculine and also were more likely to be infertile. It does depend on the type of fasting. So again, something like time restricted eating appears to be one of the safest forms of intermittent fasting. Calorie restriction can disrupt your reproductive hormones, which then disrupts ovulation, which then can cause irregular cycles or a lack of menses or a lack of period. So just be really careful. And if you want to check, go and speak to someone who knows about fasting, who's confident with fasting. Come and talk to me and I'll tell you if I think it will suit you or the best way of doing it. But for me, I'm much happier with time restricted eating because you're still eating every day. What's really important is the shorter the eating window, the more careful you have to be that you are getting enough nutrients and still getting enough calories in order for your body to function properly. And that's the biggest problem. So if you decided to work in an 8-hour window, if you were just living on coffee and a few crackers, that's actually going to have a detrimental effect on your health in the long term. So there is a way of doing it that's healthy. So this is an example of what time restricted eating can look like in practice. There's an example here of, if you ate, these are all 8 hours, but you can eat over 10 to 11 hours. I eat within a 10 to 11 hour window. So if you had your window was between 7 and 3, because obviously your timings can change, is why it's really flexible. Then, you just start off breakfast with a porridge, a really healthy porridge. You make sure you have a morning snack. You have an early lunch around 12. Really important that you still get your protein, your fat, your carbohydrates and your veggies. You have dinner around 2:30 and you'd start your fast at 3. If you were doing an 8-hour window and your window is between 10:30 and 6:30, again, you'd have a brunch at 10:30, lunch would be at 1:30. You'd have a snack around 4 o'clock and then your dinner at 6, and you basically start your fast at 6:30. You can also have an eating window of say 12 to 8 as well, where you'd have, again, your brunch at 12, afternoon snack, dinner at 5, and then maybe a light supper at 7:30. So if you do it at 7 to 3, then that's really good if you're someone that needs breakfast, if you exercise early, you're not fussed about having dinner with your family. And also if you're an athlete or if you are slightly iron deficient or anemic, then also it's better to have that starting at 7 because insulin is also highest in the morning. So it's better to have a carb-rich breakfast in the morning. The 10:30 to 6:30 window, that's good if you've got a busy morning, you're not fussed about an early breakfast, you like to eat dinner a bit earlier. Now, 5 p.m. is actually thought to be the best time because you've digested by the time you go to bed and you're much more likely to have a comfortable sleep. And then 12 to 8 is if you don't like breakfast, you're not anemic, you like to eat later, maybe you go out in the evenings. I would say that 9 to 10 can be a healthier ideal, because you are much more likely to be able to get those nutrients and those calories in. The shorter that eating window, the more challenging it is. Can be done, but the more challenging it is to actually get those nutrients and calories in. So I'm hoping that you found this helpful. I've got some resources here. Oh, this is a very quick top 10 tips kind of. So intermittent fasting doesn't specify what to eat. It's more about when to eat and how to eat. If you eat crap during your non-fasting days or times, then you'll still put on weight and you won't see health benefits. So it's really important that you focus as much on what you eat as when you eat. You still need to have around 20 to 30 grams of protein per meal, about 90 grams of protein a day, roughly. Fiber is really important. They found the two things that can happen with people that do forms of fasting is that they get dehydrated and they can get constipated. So you still need to make sure you're getting your 30 grams of fiber, lots of veggies, lots of 2 pieces of fruit, lots of whole grains and legumes. Stay hydrated, drink your water. You know, eating a Mediterranean type diet is considered one of the better diets. 5 to 7 serves of veggies, 2 servings of fruit, your whole grains, nuts, seeds, legumes, healthy fats, lots of herbs and Asian spices as well. I know Asian's not necessarily Mediterranean, but some really good, healthy Asian spices like cinnamon and turmeric and black pepper and all those things. Be careful with bulletproof coffee for those of you that love it. Some people use it to replace breakfast. It's calorie dense, but it's not necessarily nutrient dense. So be careful. It should not be a replacement for breakfast. Breakfast needs to be nutrient dense, not just fat, carb, protein, but also those vitamins and minerals and antioxidants and colors. We need that. Our body craves that. Get support. Check first, start slowly. If you're going to skip a meal, make sure that your next 2 meals or a snack are super nutrient dense, loads of vitamins and minerals, loads of veggies. Be realistic, plan ahead, but be flexible. Sometimes it's really hard. This is only going to be sustainable if you've got a lifestyle that can support it. Don't overcompensate. If you miss a meal or fast on a day, then don't binge on crap on the days where you eat. That's actually not going to help you. You can use an app, but I would highly recommend you go and speak to a nutritionist or a sports nutritionist, or kind of speak to me to see if you are fasting in a way that's as healthy as it can be. Are you getting enough nutrients? Are you getting enough calories? And here are some really cool resources. So The Circadian Code is a book written by Sachin Panda. He's a fantastic researcher who has been looking at specifically time-restricted eating, which is basically the 16 to 8, 16 hours to an 8-hour window. I've heard him speak and he's fantastic, and that book is very readable, really interesting. What the Fast by Professor Grant Schofield. So he advocates missing breakfast and lunch, skipping meals. There's The Fast 800 by Dr. Michael Mosley. And as I've said, contact a nutritionist, a naturopath, or me if you are either trying fasting. I've seen people that actually fast and they just want to check to see if they are fasting in a healthy way. Come and see me and I can tell you. So there's my email address. That's actually a website with some links. Go to that. Come and join my Facebook group, or you can come and find me on Instagram. But you can ask me, PM me, DM me, email me, check in with me, and I will do my best to see if the way you are fasting is as healthy as it can be for you. So I hope you got something out from this. I hope you've enjoyed it. I hope you've learned something new. Let me know what you thought. Let me know if you've got any questions, and I'll see you next time.